because we're going to get into scattering, surface area scattering, because that's what orgone energy can do. So, and there we are with our next slide. The importance of metal powders, surface area, and scattering EMF. And this is something we have been repeating a lot in our presentations. People talk about, how do I protect from EMF, and also the newer technologies, the nanotechnologies that are out there, and all of these different levels of G, the 3G, the 4G, the 5G, the 7G, the 14G, right? All of that is just different spectrums of frequencies.
Yes.
Right. And we've done presentations where we show the different spectrums of frequencies, so you can define which one is, and how it can protect you from all these different frequencies. The bottom line is that when we're dealing with these advanced technologies and the nanotechnologies and the frequencies with the 7 terahertz and the 6 terahertz frequencies, you need to be able to fight, shield, protect on the same level as this technology, right? So if it's a nanotechnology, you need something in a nano form to protect against it, or else it's kind of like putting up a barbed wire fence to be a mosquito net, right? You have to get something that's the same size, on the same level,
smaller than mosquito,
as the mosquito, in order to combat the mosquito, or smaller than the mosquito, right? So that's the concept that we're talking about here. So that's why that's one of the reasons why we choose metal powders. You look at the evil, bad technology that is harming people. And if you look at all of the studies in the industry, right? We've listened to hours of studies and presentations done by people that are working on the nanotechnology, that are working on the 6G and the 7G, or the 7 terahertz technology. And one thing that they're always talking about in their presentations is how they need surface area.
Yes.
They need a lot of surface area in order for their technology to work properly, right? So that's why they're covering everything with it, spraying it, and everything's in a very small nano size, because they're trying to create a mesh network on a nano scale with surface area. So one thing that you can do to combat the surface area is a scattering effect.
Yes.
Right? If they're looking for surface area, you find a way to scatter all of that away from you. I'm just trying to explain this in like simple terms.
Yes.
For people that are not technical to understand, the scattering is important. And the more scattering that you want, right, then you're going to need more surface area to create that scattering.
What's important about this slide, and we'll make the slide available, this presentation available for people to download.
Yeah.
But this particular slide goes in depth as to the why we're using powders.
Yes.
Some of the people who are watching this presentation might have seen all kinds of products online called orgonite, and ask themselves, why are some pieces of orgonite hardly have anything in it, and it's just epoxy, a clear epoxy piece. Some have epoxy, but they have like metal shavings in it that looks like it came out of a milling shop. And others look like it's like really fine flakes or very fine powder, and you can't really tell the grain size. And this answers the why. The smaller the material, the smaller the particle size in your composite, the more effective, and depending on what metal or material it is with its physical properties, the more effective it's going to be in combating and response and absorbing or scattering these signals that have been weaponized. Now the drawback is, so you might ask yourself, well, why isn't everyone using powders then? And it's a lot of it is down to access or knowledge for one, then access to the key materials that are a part of powder of a certain size, and also the cost. Powders are a lot more expensive, but the trade-off is that you don't need a kilogram or 2 pounds of metal shavings when you can do it in a teaspoon of powder, because its surface area is much, much higher.
And I want to throw in there too is the aesthetics. When you have a bunch of powders mixed together, it just creates a black liquid.
It's boring looking. It's boring.
It's not as pretty as the clear pyramids with a bunch of gemstones in there and, talismans and
And
spirals
a
and
golden
things.
statue in the middle.
It's not a work of art. It
Yes, it's
is,
beautiful.
which, those are beautiful works of art and they're pretty statues. But when we're talking about the technical aspects and properties of an orgone energy generator, then it's kind of almost like the uglier it is, the more powerful it is, right? But so, I mean, we try our best to make our products as beautiful as possible by putting a color on the outside of them, but all of them are made out of powder, so the inside is not clear and it's not rainbow layers and all of that other
But at
stuff.
the same time, and this is why we give honor to anyone who's making their own orgonite, especially if they're making it and they're giving it and selling to other people, is because this is where you have the artistic license. You have the liberty to say, well, okay, I want this layer to be effective, so I'm going to have powder there. Then I'm going to have some metal shavings here, and I'm going to have my design because jazz it up, right?
Yeah.
So so this is a very exciting thing to get into, but this slide explains the why.
Yeah, and you could freeze the frame and read through these
Mhm.
technical explanations, but each one on the one on the left says metal powders scatter microwave fields
Yeah.
and metal powders absorb
Yes.
microwave fields.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why we use metal powders. There's all the technical specs as to how that works scientifically. And with that said, I've just made a little chart here to give everybody a perspective of the concept of surface area in your ingredients and for orgone energy creation. So over on the left, you've got less surface area. So you got big rocks,
Yes.
right? Big rocks or big crystals.
Yeah.
And that's less effective because there's less surface area.
Yes.
Right. And way over on the right, we've got our high surface area ingredients, and the highest surface area is powders, right? So that would be the most effective, the most powerful
So
orgone
it's
field.
also why the studies like the one dealing with radar shielding is using composites because they're focused on the powders.
Yes, the powders. And then in the middle, you've got your shavings, right? So they're a little more effective because there's more surface area. And then over here, we've got pebbles. So when you're looking at products that are claiming to be orgone energy products, look and see what's inside of them. And the bigger the thing is inside of them, the less surface area there is inside of that
And,
composite.
and also a creator or seller of orgonite also look to see if they describe what's inside their orgonite as well, their composite that they made.
Yeah, list the ingredients. It's really important. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the importance of using epoxy resin, which has to do with pressure, right? In your orgone energy composite. But first, let's just tackle this question right up front that we've gotten in the beginning when we started making this. We got this question a lot. We made videos about this, and people were asking, but isn't epoxy toxic? Right?
Right.
So I'll have Tavon explain whether or not epoxy is toxic and why you should or should not be concerned about that.
Right. So the cured epoxy after you've made it and it's the hardened part at the end, whether it's an epoxy piece of jewelry, which is very popular right now, resin-based jewelry, is not toxic in the sense that you can take that hardened piece and put it on and it won't leach anything onto you. And this is assuming that the person doesn't have any allergies of any kind. A lot of these comments often they're very generalized. So they're very ambiguous for people to think, well, what do you mean by toxic? I mean, you're not going to eat the thing, right? So,
Yes,
but
please don't eat the pendants.
yeah, as an epoxy based piece of ornament or jewelry, that's very popular. It's not toxic in that sense. Now, the raw form, where if you know anything about epoxy, it's normally made where you have a mold for the piece that you're about to make, and you have a part A and a part B. The A is the actual epoxy resin itself, and the B is the hardener or catalyst that you have to mix with A to make it hard into that final piece.
Yeah.
Now, in its raw form, either A or B are toxic, meaning that you should be wearing gloves. Depending on what kind of epoxy resin it is with its chemistry, it may or may not give off a fume. If it does give off a fume while you're working with it, you have to have it in a ventilated area or wear some kind of aspirator mask or do it outside, which you find a lot of people doing. Often now the chemistry is so that it doesn't emit a fume while you're working with it, but you don't want to get that on your skin because a lot of these epoxies, they do contain like a bisphenol type of chemistry, and you don't want that on your skin. So you take necessary precautions like you do most things working around your house in crafts. There's a lot of things that to some level you can argue that are toxic. But in any case, the final.
Have you ever painted your room?
Well, that's what I was going to say. The
When you,
adhesives that you use to
you
put
know,
up your wallpaper
yeah,
with
if you're
with
using it
those fumes,
to put up your wallpaper,
my
that
goodness.
has a fume. If you paint, that has a fume. So it's very similar to that.
It's no different than normal conditions in around the household during the crafts and that sort of thing. But the final piece in itself is an inert ornament that you can use, that you can wear for whatever need that you have. So also, by the way, it's no more dangerous than the cured plastic, like from the devices around you, which are plastics. The processes that in which they're made are different, but at the end of the day, they're plastics too. And in their raw form, when you're melting them, you don't want to smell the fumes and put in when it's cast into a mold or into a part. But after it cools down and is made into a keyboard or is made into any of these other structures, those are fine, inert NCR for our need, right? So,
And when we make our products here, so we deal with the making of them. We deal with the part A and the part B, and we mix them together. We always wear gloves, and we do what we call the pour, right? So we prepare all the molds. It takes most of the day to prepare the molds and get them all ready for the pour. And at the very last thing at the end of the day that we do is we open all the windows, we highly ventilate the room, and then we do the pour, and then we leave it there overnight
yeah,
with nobody in the room with it. So that, so there's not like an accumulation of inhaling fumes.
yeah,
But as the consumer of our products, you don't have to worry about any of that because we do all that here in the factory. It's no longer emitting a fume when you receive it.
yeah. The hardened part is inert.
Once the epoxy is cured, the toxicity levels basically go away, and it's just an inanimate object. It's not toxic to have in your house with you.
Mhm.
And that's the answer of epoxy resin and if it's toxic or not. But there's an importance as to why we have to use epoxy resin.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, that also applies to where you see now the epoxy wooden tables, the
Mhm.
epoxy countertops, the floors that are epoxy. Epoxies are used because of their toughness, their ruggedness, especially indoors. It takes certain chemistries to make them work outdoors. That's kind of a continued struggle, but in general, it's for their hardness and ruggedness is why they're used all over the household. So having covered that, I also want to cover this thing dealing with epoxy resin and how it can be used with what we're doing, which is creating these devices, the core products with regard to microwave radiation. Epoxy resin is generally transparent to microwaves, so it is a matrix that contains all those composite materials we talked about earlier. But when the microwaves hit it, it doesn't see the epoxy, which means it doesn't absorb or heat up significantly the epoxy material itself. And studies confirm that standard cure epoxy resins do not heat up in microwave ovens. So they're basically transparent. The waves in general go through those and interact with what's inside the matrix is what you want, and which is why we use epoxy composites. Also, the epoxies are the matrix material that puts pressure on the other components to get that piezoelectric effect that Hope mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and that's our next slide is talking about surface pressure. So as Tavon just mentioned, we're looking for something that creates a lot of pressure on those ingredients that we listed so that we can get that piezoelectric effect, or in this case, a really strong, powerful piezoelectric effect in order to generate that orgone field of energy. So what you're looking at here is a chart that I created because we've been asked, well, can't you make orgonite out of liquids and gels and beeswax and concrete? And we're showing you that when you use these different ingredients to make an orgone energy composite, you're going to have more effective as far as more surface pressure on the ingredients, and you're going to have less effective or less surface pressure on the ingredients. So on the left side, the lowest surface pressure is a liquid or a gel. So we had somebody say, well, can you make like a med bed with a gel cushion out of orgone energy? I think the answer is no. You're not going to get an orgone field of energy when you're using gels or liquids. Beeswax, there's been people that have tried to make orgone composites out of beeswax. And again, there's not that much surface pressure on the ingredients, but also, Tavon, how will beeswax hold up in weather?
It definitely won't last in this weather.
Mm-hmm.
In Marrakesh, it's sunny most of the year, and it's about 6 months of intense heat. And we have monsoon season. Now we'll call it monsoon season. You're getting increased rains, so the temperature varies and quite wildly, especially during the summer with the heat and the cold.
And even stuff inside the house gets really hot. Like my shampoo bottles get hot when it's really, really hot out there. So you know, like a piece of orgonite that's made out of beeswax is not going to hold up to those conditions.
Yeah,
It'll
these three materials that we're looking at here on the left, over any period of time would quickly erode with an outdoor environment.
And the same thing with concrete. Concrete is
It's obviously a building material
it's a
that
building
the
material.
whole world
It's
uses it.
stronger. It's stronger, but it doesn't have the same amount of surface pressure. And it's thick and it's messy. It's not like a clear liquid like epoxy is, so it's more difficult to work
And
with.
it's also water permeable.
Yes.
So epoxy resin is airtight.
Mm-hmm.
When you encase something in an epoxy resin, it's virtually a vacuum sealed. Nothing can get to it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of encapsulation you need for what we're trying to do. That's why we prefer epoxy.
So just so you know, we're not making this up. These are just a couple of examples of different orgonite creators that choose to use these ingredients like beeswax. They call it a beeswax orgonite tower buster with rose quartz. And again, you'll see it's beeswax, but it's got solid giant pieces of rose quartz in there. Maybe some powder of some kind of metal, I'm not sure. And then over here on the right, we've got the concrete orgonite pyramid, which is, it looks like it's roughly
Well, it looks
the
like
same.
it's hybrid because the tip looks like it might be a epoxy, possibly.
No, the tip
It
is
looks like
open
it's open. Oh, it's an
Okay.
open. Okay.
with I think there's like a crystal in there and some pieces of metal. And I'm not sure what they put in their mix. So these are just examples we're showing you of people that use different ingredients, and they don't use high pressure curing epoxy for their orgone. And we'll get more into, you know, what to look for good stuff, more powerful stuff, and, you know, towards the end of this.
And with our presentation, there are experiments for testing the strength of your orgone, dealing with the ice test. If you've seen that online, dealing with the structure of water changing when it's under the influence of an orgone field. Also dealing with growth around placing seedlings around your little orgone piece. So we still leave it to our the audience who are listening to this to if they want to buy some of these other pieces, if they're made in a different way, and test those also. We recommend to just go and see if it works for you.
Many people become sensitive to EMFs, which can cause a number of health issues. Using orgone energy products in your environment can protect you from EMF toxicity and help to restore a harmonious environment that aids in better health and well-being. The results vary from better sleep, pain relief, better growth in plants, food preservation, better mental clarity, and an overall calming effect. These handmade devices are a composite of shungite, steel, iron oxide, quartz, and brass powders, all encased in an epoxy resin. They emit a passive grounding field of orgone energy. When used in your environment, these devices transform the harmful energy given off by electromagnetic frequencies or EMFs that come from 5G, your cell phones, Wi-Fi, and electronic devices into healthy, life-preserving energy. These orgone energy devices are available available in different shapes and sizes for a variety of different uses. Pendants that you wear, phone shields to use on your electronics, sleeping pods to help protect you at night, and charge plates to use for food preservation, pyramids to grid your property, and garden pucks to help your plants grow. They even have construction tiles to help transform your space. And now there are products for your pets and headset protectors. To learn more, read the science and testimonials and save 10%. Click the link in the description below.